We're here with Lamont and Chrelinda, and we're going to be talking about their lives and just a little bit of background. I remember you told me about how you met, but just briefly remind me how you two met and became a couple. And it depends on who's telling.
That's right.
Okay.
Always depends on who's telling. In a nutshell, I used to come to back and forth in Nashville. I'm saxophonist, so I would try to dibble and see if I could play on someone's stage. And this particular time, I had came in and I went out with a couple of classmates and went to a night spot that just so happened to be his dad's owned night spot. And he walked in. He walked in. I was kind of by myself, and he walked in, and I'll never forget, he had this blue suit on with quarter-length coat and the blue gaiters and all this silver and bling on, and I'm like,
don't forget about the Godfather.
Oh yeah,
I remember the hat.
And the matching Godfather, and the thoughts that went through my head, I was like, oh, he is no good. Keep walking. And so, he finally made it over to my table. And when he came, he kept asking me to dance, and I wouldn't. But finally, I said, okay. And we danced, we talked. He gave me his card with all his credentials. Front and back.
Oh, what?
Yes.
Okay.
Phone number. And I was like, no, you too much. You too much. I don't think so. I'm from Knoxville anyway. I'm not going to be here. And, conversation went on. Well, I went home and that card was there. And when I unpacked it, and I was like, I ain't going to call him. Threw it away. Threw it away 3 times. 3 times the card never was in the trash can when I came back home.
That's what God jumped in.
And I threw it away, I promise you, 3 times. And finally I said, okay. And to this day, I remember looking at the card and looking at my seal and said, 1 phone call is all he gets.
So before going back to when I walked in the door, of course I'm visually impaired. I had a friend of mine, and I was a ladies' man back in the day, and I used to get the guys to say, I was like, hey, is any cute girls in here, that I hadn't talked to in a while before, and they said, yeah, so light skinned girl over there in the corner over there. I was like, okay. Went over there and got told. I did my whole spiel and got totally rejected. And I walked away and I was like, that's gonna be my wife. That was my exact word.
You thought that from
the beginning, just because of how she carried herself, how she was not going to be allowed to be just another girl in the neighborhood. So when she told me she was from Knoxville, I didn't give up. That was back when it was long distance to call Knoxville. I still called. I still did all that stuff. And she finally picked up that card and called me back. And we January 13th.
That was when we met.
How many years?
It will be 20 years, March 9th, 2021.
Wow.
Yeah. So here it is, almost 20 years later. That 1 phone call he came to visit for a weekend. I finally let him come visit for a weekend, and he never went home. He got him a job, and he worked.
Before her, like I said, I'm visually impaired. I didn't drive much. I've never thought about driving to Knoxville. So I got on the interstate and got to driving. I was like, Knoxville, that's not 30 minutes away. So I pulled over. I pulled over like Crossville or something. I found the payphone. I was like, hey, did I pass it? She's like, no, you got about an hour and a half left. It's like an hour and a half. So that I always tell people we end up getting married because I didn't feel like driving back to Nashville. So
he didn't come back. We came back a year and a half later with a family and married and ready to start living here.
Wow, I'd forgotten the details there, but the important part is you see God's hand in it all.
It was all for it to be in the lifestyle I was living, and her being in the lifestyle she was living. She was going to McDonald Drive Church of Christ, and I was at I was in and out of church, but I was at inner city ministries. I'm an inner city child.
You grew up in inner city?
In the inner city ministry. Yeah. And so we, for us to walk those 2 different lives, and so many hours away from each other, it was nothing but God. I also had a paper, and I wish I would have kept it. It described the wife that I wanted. I wrote that when I was like 14. And she is the spitting image of exactly what I had on the paper. That was crazy. So it was all God.
Well, it's encouraging for people to hear those type of stories. Particularly young people to hear those type of stories, knowing that, hey, God is really there and God will really take care of you. And you knew what you were looking for, and God guided you, both of you, to who you were looking for.
Yeah. And He knew I was tired. That was another reason why I rejected so fast. I was tired. I was tired of knuckleheads. Let's put it that way.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
you were tired of that type of dating scene, and that's not what you're looking for anymore.
And it's so crazy because, like I said, I was nowhere near. If you have talked to any of my family members, any of my friends, I was nowhere near ready to get married. And I didn't drink or anything then, but it was like, it was a sobering moment in that club. I stood there and I was like, that's going to be my wife. I'm like, what? And all the guys was like, what are you talking about? I was
just turned you down.
I was like, that's going to be my wife. And it's just scary even just thinking about it now that she is my wife. So.
Fascinating. Thank you for sharing that.
I tease him a lot because I'm older than him. And he told me when we met, when he said that he wasn't ready, he was just 22 years old.
Oh, okay. Well, fascinating story, and I know there's more to it, but we're here to talk about racial experiences and how your faith intermingles with all that, and you both obviously have a strong faith, but let's talk about being black and how that has affected you. Positive, negative, childhood, teen, adults, but I'm just throwing the ball to you here. I don't know who wants to talk first on this one, but let's just go with negative for a minute. Okay. I mean, what experiences have you had being black that you would consider to be negative?
Yeah. I grew up in East Nashville in the projects in Cellar Court, Sam Levy homes.
Now that's one of the more difficult and dangerous places, isn't it?
Yes. So it's in chills because it's so many stories, but I grew up in a black neighborhood we had maybe 1 or 2 white families. But it was difficult for me because if I'm walking or riding my bike in the neighborhood, the police will stop me because they're thinking I'm a white guy. Okay, so I get stopped by them, or if I'm walking through the neighborhood and if the particular person don't know me, they thinking I'm a white guy. Or so I'm pretty much a black guy in a white man's body when you look at that type of stuff. But the negative parts of being black growing up, the negative parts is it's almost like if you take 2 steps, you get set back 4. I was raised to respect, for instance, the police. Respect the police, and you got this situation where you can't do this and you can't do that. You're walking on eggs. What do you call eggshells? All the time. But that's not, and the misunderstanding about, and I know I'm probably going off topic, but the misunderstanding is it's not all cops are not bad. But growing up, you had to know which one was which. You had 3 type of cops growing up in the neighborhood. You had the veterans that knew how to speak to everybody. You had the rookies that, depending on who trained them, it depends on which way they go. Then you had that bad cop, which was very few. It was not a lot, but it was very few. But that one bad cop could make a difference on a whole community. I was going. I was going home one day, dropped my grandmother off, and I got pulled over on Spring Street. And they said, "Oh, I know you got drugs in here." And
That's how they started it, huh?
Yes, and I used to wear a lot of jewelry and all that. And so, and I had a system in my car where my rearview mirror would come off. So I had a blade to scrape the glue off, so it looks like you had residue right there, right? Wow. And I was like, no, that's just from that. And I showed them. They snatched me out the car on Spring Street. They made me take off all my clothes and lay on the back seat with my legs up, and they gave me a cavity search on the street, and it was just so demeaning, and that's one of one of the many stories. But just being black growing up, you always almost had to prove yourself a lot. It's so hard to explain, because if it's something like flying a plane, if you never experienced it, you even telling me about it, I wouldn't understand. Uh-huh. But that's one of the many incidents growing up negative, being black to me.
Well, I certainly could see how that would be totally humiliating. And you're right. As you try to explain being black to someone who's not black, all they can do is just hear the words of your story, right, and they don't get the full impact of it, of course. Right. But I could, that would be horribly, obviously embarrassing and hurtful. And
yeah, it is. And again, like I said, it's so many stories that you could go through on a negative aspect, but the biggest part of it is just we were raised to know how to act in certain places, and it's like, we always was told, just because you're poor don't mean you have to look poor. So iron your clothes, look presentable. We were taught that type stuff, and so. But at the same time, you were poor, and you were, I don't know how to explain it, but
you were trying to act and present yourself as well as you could, given your circumstances.
Yes, yes, and but we in the black community, it's racism everywhere. No matter what your color is. It's not all racist people are not one color. That's a lifestyle that somebody else is living. But but in the black community, we were always, my grandmother took in more white guys that was homeless. You come downstairs and you see a white guy laying on the porch because she wanted him safe. We were just trained to live and trained not to get killed. That I think that's in the nutshell. You're just trained to live. You look presentable, so if you get stopped, or if you, not even just so much by the police, because if you were in a certain neighborhood riding your bike, you're getting, why is he over here? But in the turn, you grow up at school, and it's like all people are created equal, and this, that, and the other, and it's like, that's not how I'm living, though. So
Well, these are the same type of stories that the other couples have talked about, who are older than you somewhat. I mean, and that's what I'm picking up from hearing the stories. You had to learn to be on guard
at all times. And what's so sad is, like you said, they're older. And I'm right here in the middle. We're right here in the middle. And you could interview somebody that's 19 and just got married, or 19 and just starting to live their life, and they can tell you the same thing in 2020.
Yes, I gather that. And what do you tell your children how to live, or are they just picking up on it, or do you have to instruct them? Or
two things. Because we've always been told that, and people before us been told that, I have tried not to tell them that, not to try to do the instruction. I think I failed as a black father at a certain point of our lives, not telling them that, because I didn't start telling them that at the beginning of their lives because I didn't want them to live with that fear. But then I started noticing, especially in today's society, it's like, you better have that conversation with your children, because we go to a predominantly white church, and that's not by choice, that's by God. God placed us here. And just like, when all the term, if anything crazy has happened throughout with the split of the church and all that, I don't leave because of a person, or I don't leave because of a situation. I'm here because God sent me here at Madison. I'm here until He tells me it's time to go, and I don't think that's going to be the case.
This is our church.
But this is what I've done to my children, is tried to switch the narrative of saying, not training them until not too recent, that okay, all of the things that's happening in society, my children don't understand, because I pull them out of the neighborhoods, and so they don't know none of that stuff. So now it's like, okay, now I gotta give you a crash course of what I've had to deal with all my life. With William, he's driving now. He's driving to White House. He's got church friends up there. He's driving in the middle of the night to Chattanooga, and it's like, okay, son, let me sit down and talk to you. When you get pulled over, this, that, and the other, don't put that hood on. If you drive, and turn your heat on, pull your hood off. So I am reteaching my children something that I just wanted to break. I wanted to break that cycle. And I don't know if it's able to be broken, because now I'm talking to my children about it, because I have to.
You're very eloquent in what you have to say. And this is important, what you're having to say.
And it's hard.
Is it hard?
It's hard.
Is it hard doing this on camera?
Nope. It's hard doing it off camera, on camera. Yeah. It's hard because this is not only, to be honest, I hate the fact that we have to interview this. I hate the fact that we have to do this, because this is not speaking on the church, this is not a black church. This is not a white church. This is God's church. So we shouldn't have to express ourselves on how we feel to be here, because I don't accept that black white church thing, because we're all here for one reason. God didn't send us down to be judge and jury. He sent us down to be farmers. He sent us down to plant the seed of Jesus Christ, and I feel like we're missing that. And especially with the politics that's going on, it's like we're forgetting that we've already placed our ballot to Jesus Christ. The rest of this stuff is worldly, and we have to do it. But I'm not upset if you voted this way and I voted that way, and that doesn't make you me hate you or my enemy. That makes you my brother, and we're in the United States of America where we can have that choice. So you're not stupid if you voted for this way, or you're not racist if you voted for this way. That's your freedom. That's what people, black, white, died for. Like in the army and all these other things, we people fought for that. And so we stood in line the other day, and how wonderful it was that it was voters voting for everything, but we all had cordial conversations. We laughed, we talked, we went in and did our ballot and came out. That's how America's supposed to be. So it hurts that I have to describe how it feels to be black in America, or black in the church. But it's reality. And as a deacon of the church, I promise you, I have to admit this part, that I didn't want to do the interview at first. But if we don't have this conversation, whatever's going on is going to continue. And it's just like that pilot that we talked about flying a plane. If I don't explain to you what's going on, you won't know, right? And instead of easily saying, well, this congregation is predominantly white because they want to keep certain people out. It's not that. And if anybody needs to ask me a personal question of how it is to be black, I don't mind, but it is hard. It is hard. So
I feel honored and humbled, and we all do, that you're willing to talk about this. I mean, we're the ones initiating the conversation because we do want to know, and we want to give people an opportunity to hear.
Yeah.
So thank you. Cherlinda, let's turn to you here. So you said you had many experiences. I know we don't have time for all of that, but Cherlinda, can you think of something on the negative side?
Growing up,
Yeah.
believe it or not, I really didn't have any negative that I can even recall to speak on. I grew up in a predominantly black neighborhood in East Knoxville. The area I was in, I didn't see the police all the time. I didn't see a lot of action, so to speak, on my street all the time. We kept to ourselves. The most action you would see is if one of the dogs got loose. Or where I lived, if you crossed over a main road, Magnolia Avenue, and you would be at the fairgrounds, and periodically the peacocks would fly from the zoo and would either be in your yard or at the neighborhood elementary that I went to. I went once I came out of elementary. It was a predominantly black neighborhood. We did have a few whites there, but once I came out of elementary, I was playing the saxophone, so my mom and dad knew that I had a great teacher, and the school that he went to was out of zone for me. So my parents sent me to the zone that he taught for middle and high school. And when I went, that was my first time going to a mixed school where there were whites and there was blacks and there was Chinese, and it was like, oh. So I learned a lot, and they learned a lot from us. And it was like it wasn't so much of black and white. It was just like, we were at school. We're at school. This is what we do. We learn. We go to band. We go to gym. We have basketball. And it was okay. And I continued on with the same people to high school, and it was okay. But growing up in the home, I heard the stories that my dad went through in Knoxville, the names he was called. And my dad was one that was... he has a lot of heirs in his blood, so to speak. My grandfather was black. My grandmother was Indian and Irish, German, white. So she had all of that coming, in her family tree. So when it comes down to us, it's like we're just all kind of mixed everything. So I heard the stories, and my mom was from Detroit, so I heard her stories. So growing up, it was a constant, hear these stories. You need to make sure that you know what you're talking about. You're where you're supposed to be when you say you're there. Make sure you're not in trouble. Make sure you're doing everything. You were not just being parents, but being a black child, because you need to stay and do what you're supposed to do. And don't cause any trouble. And that was it. And my dad was a great disciplinarian. What he said was law. You had to do it regardless. And so I was one that was, as my friends would say, Lamont. I have two real good friends that would come over periodically from Knoxville. And Lamont would always say, come on, give me something good on Cherlinda. I know she wasn't that good. That is like, no, Cherlinda really, she was that goody two shoes. She did what she was supposed to because of, her parents. And I was scared of the police, but I wasn't as scared because I had policemen in my family. And so I knew that if they wouldn't hurt me, why would my mental, as I'm growing, my cousins won't hurt me. Why would these other cops hurt me? So, it was a constant, it was like a little battle in my head, like, oh, they're not going to hurt me. That's not what this is about. But as I became older, I was seeing stuff, and I was like, I think the first time I ever took notice was what was it, Rodney King, wasn't it? Yeah. In Cali. Yeah. That was the first time I really, it just, like a bomb, it hit me. And I was like, oh, this is real. And then and everything went from there. But that was the first time I honestly took notice, and I was like, okay, this is different. I need to pay attention.
What I'm hearing, generally there's pressure on being a black child, right? I mean, you feel like you have to exceed and super exceed, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yes.
To be a success, you have to work extra hard, is what I'm picking up.
Yes.
Even as working at the Tennessee School for the Blind, as I grew through the ranks, I'm a supervisor now, but everything I did, I had to do 2 or 3 times more. When I became supervisor, we had 3 trainings we were supposed to take. I took 7. Because I was always, you have to do above and beyond just to get it. I took 7. They had a thing called Atomic Learning. They wanted 16. I took 23 trainings. You had to have experience. At that point, I had 5 years experience. The other people didn't have many. I still didn't get the position. I still did not get the position. So the other people did not take any of the training. They didn't do any of the courses. They had less experience. I still didn't get it.
Let me play counselor.
Okay.
How did that make you feel?
I've been so hurt through that type thing that I started sweeping things under the rug. I started denying the fact that happened because I was black. But then when you look back, and I speak to other people, now that I'm a supervisor, and I talk to the other supervisors that were there and made that decision, they told me that was a bad decision, that they shouldn't have did that. It made me feel, thank God for my Christianity, because it would put hatred in me. It did. And the Christianity is like that drop of ink that you put in water. And it's just like, I'm mad. And all of a sudden, it calms me down, because I know that if it's meant for me, God will open that door. And he did later on.
Well, it's not fair. I mean, it's more than it just doesn't seem fair. It's not fair. I mean, things that you've experienced. Yeah. But you're saying that your faith has helped you, give you the strength to do whatever you think you need to do.
My faith, our faith, has been the cornerstone. It has been our rock, because I'm telling you, you guys know our story. We've been almost homeless twice. And if it was not for Madison, and I can say this, if it was not for Madison, we would probably have been homeless, because my family, I love my family to death. The ones that couldn't help financially, or they couldn't help us out of that situation. But when it came to our church family, everybody was just like, hey, what do you guys need? How can we help? Yeah. And it was not done out of,
okay, we're going to help them. What are y'all going to do now?
Yeah, it wasn't done. It was like, we just need to help these people and this family, and then move on. But it makes me, this conversation just brings back so much on when they say how is it that what is it that they talk about, how how come the black family struggles more, no matter what you do to put in and how you do it, it's still a struggle. And I think it's an exhaustion from just getting to that point. Like it's so exhausting to just get. So a lot of people just say, forget it. I'll just stay here. And it's in the black community, it's almost like, well, I know I can't reach that milestone, so I'll just stay right where it's easy. Mm-hmm. And that's hard to say. That's hard to, but in my household, we tell our children, you are what God has judged you to be, and that's a king and a queen. And so you need to act accordingly, so, and that's why I try to push my children to do all they can, but it's still scary because we're still black.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be that way. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. And you have someone like William, who wanted all his life when he was little to be an officer. He wanted to be a police officer so bad. And as things started progressing and he's starting to see things on TV and he's getting these questions, you could just see it in his face when he's just like,
it started changing.
It changed.
To the point where when we find a police officer, I was like, hey, can you talk to my son about, being a police officer and how good it is and how, and it just, it never resonated. It switched from police officer to veterinarian. And I up until probably a year or two ago, I ended up stopped trying to push the issue, but I used to stop.
He had a situation.
Yeah.
He had a situation to happen to him, and we knew it was over. It was over. It would never come back. He actually had. We have been in the Hermitage area for many, many, many years, and he had the Kroger's there. He had went to. These kids have been going there since they were little.
That everybody knows.
And the management that's been there for a long time, they know us. He has an unforgettable face, so they pretty much know who we are.
Means.
No, in a good way. Yeah.
But
you might need counseling.
But he was skateboarding, which is something him and his brothers do a lot. Mm-hmm. And he skateboarded from the apartment to Kroger's, and the police officer was just like, hey, you can't write that in the store. He was like, okay, and he just picked it up and went on to the store. But he was followed by this the whole time he was in the store. William said I couldn't even get what I wanted because he was standing there watching me at the beginning of every aisle. Like he said, I don't know if he thought I was going to skateboard or steal, but he kept watching me. Every time I moved, he moved. And so only thing I know from there was my phone was blowing up, and it was William, and he was just ballistic by this time, yelling and screaming. He's like, they already called the cops. They already do this. And I was like, okay, I'm on my way. And I'm rushing from my job to get to Kroger's. And I think he got in touch with you.
We both pulled up at the same time. The thing was, the officer said that William had started skateboarding in the store. In the store. And so when they ran the cameras, they was like, he never set it down. I said, listen, I'm going to tell you now, my son didn't do that. I know people don't know what their kids do if they're not around, but he know that he'd have a worse rap than for me to do something that crazy. So anyway, police would call, and that guy was immediately asked to leave the Kroger because he's on the phone. I'm talking to him, me and you about as close as we were, and he told the police that I've swung at him, I've approached him, and I ran up on him. I'm like, you do know that the manager's standing right here. Yeah. So just the fact that he had that ability to produce a lie like that could have got my son killed. Could have got me killed because now you're saying I'm assaulting you, and you're a retired police officer and a security guard. Is like, just to lie like that just blew my mind. I see it on TV all the time. I never thought that the lying part would happen to us.
We had blocked traffic because I was so scared and so just like, you're not getting ready to take my son for something he did. No, we're not going to do this. And, you know.
So because my son was upset, he was upset, and I had to go over there and calm him down. And I had to remind him, just like a soldier or just like a student in a class, remember our training, son. Remember what I told you that could possibly happen to you. Now, mind you, go back to, I'm just now starting to teach my kids this because I just refused. I was in denial that I would have to teach them this is how you need to live. But I had to go back and say, remember, William, that I told you that this could happen to you. You know, by the grace of God, though, I've always told them when you go to a store, be respectful. People remember, no matter the color. Nowadays, kids now are just disrespectful, period. So to hear a child in 2020 say, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am, it's very rare. So, and all the workers is like, your children are so respectful and blah, blah, blah. So they remember him. But I was like, that's that training. That's that thought that we have to go back to. Son, you remember what I told you? But he wouldn't have won that anyway because the guy had already judged him. And that goes back to being judge and jury. And we not, this is not good.
That's not our place.
So.
Were you going to tell that story?
No.
Or did that just come as we were talking?
It just came, and
I forgot about. Not forgot, but that.
I just thought about it. Yeah.
I mean, that's so powerful.
It's a lot. That's what I mean by growing up. I didn't think because I had officers in the family. I'm like, they're not gonna. No, and so I can relate to. And understand that Lamont, he didn't tell the kids all that because we're like, it's not gonna happen. Y'all gonna be okay. Y'all go to school with mixed race kids. You're in church with mixed race kids and people. You're okay.
And we purposely, when we got married, again, she's coming from Knoxville, and I was in the inner city. Inner city was predominantly black. We had white people in there, but it was predominantly black. Cherlinda went to a all-black church. My goal was to get to purposely, and I'll say God's plan because I feel like, again, He led us here, but I wanted to go to a mixed church. Now I told so that means I have to find either a all-white church. I have to find some, I just didn't want to go to an all-black church because that's not how heaven is. That's not how God placed the world. So I told her to go out and find a church. I said, you go out and find a church. And we went to different Church of Christ. We wanted to stay in Church of Christ.
And we wanted one that had a good children's part. That was the main thing because by this time we had 3 kids.
Yeah. And so I didn't go that day. I knew about Madison, but by her coming to Nashville, I wanted her to feel comfortable. I didn't want to say, go to Madison Church of Christ, because you guys had helped. They helped us with inner city. You've always been influenced with inner city. But she came back and she was like, "Oh my God, they loved it. They loved on the babies and they did this." Shariah was a baby. She's 16 now.
Yeah,
and she was a baby then.
She was like 6 months.
I think I heard you tell that story publicly once, even from the pulpit.
Yeah,
right?
They loved. I lost her for like 15 minutes.
She said they were passing
her around and giving me a tour of the building. I was like, "There's my baby."
So when she came back, I knew about Madison, but when she came back, that sealed the deal. She loved it. She loved the environment. So that sealed the deal on that, and then we've been going ever since.
Yeah.
Well, what you've shared has just been so good and so moving. We can wrap this up. I mean, I'm thinking about all that you've said already, but anything else you would like to communicate to people who may be watching, like elders or other members here, or even those outside of the church who may watch this?
Okay. Go ahead. Do you want to speak?
I'll let you.
I feel like I've overtalked.
You have, man.
No.
I've never felt like racial tension here at all. in church at all. And I enjoy coming to church. So if this is a place that you're coming to for worship, I feel like I'm trying to think of how to say it. I just feel like it's a good place. It's a good church home, and I know one of the things we might need is maybe more minority programs that speak. Now I don't know what I hadn't put all that together, but maybe more minority programs that speak to those who don't know Madison. A lot of people who might look at Madison on the outside might say, "Oh yeah, that's a white Church of Christ. That's this, that's that," but they don't know that there's some blacks in there. It's other races in there too. We have a whole Hispanic church in here. There's other people in here, but they may not know that. And so I think that would help if there was something to speak to the minority, to let them know, hey, no, come on.
Yeah, more aware of, hey, you're welcome. It doesn't matter. We want to minister to all different families, regardless, and use everybody, not just to be ministered to, but to minister.
Yes.
I mean, to help.
Yeah. I before the split of our church, at that point, we were bench warmers. We came in, we enjoyed the church, we enjoyed the service,
and then we left.
And then when everything happened, it was time for us to get up, because it was like, we're not going to let the church fail. We probably didn't play a great part in it, but my thing is, we got up and we get out.
You took action to try to help.
So I'm asking the Madison Church of Christ to not be bench warmers in this whole racial divide that the world is going through.
Yes.
Right now, you have to take your politics and leave them at the door and put your farmer outfit on and start planting seeds. And it's like, we got to get out here in this community and say, I don't care how much you make. I don't care that you, what kind of clothes you have on or where you live. Come in here and enjoy the service. Benevolence is my heart. I love it. I don't do enough right now. I want to get back into it. But benevolence, that to see all walks of life in line, we got to get our church to look like benevolence.
Now that's well said. We've got to get
get
our church to look like benevolence.
Yes.
What is happening there?
Because if you look at it, we're feeding them the food, but we got to feed them the word.
Right.
So,
and I know efforts are always made to do that, but we still have to be working on that.
Yeah. Because one story I know, of course I'm no shame in my game. We still get help from the church in benevolence. But I always waited till after the people left, and then we got in line. Well, this one lady was like, when I was praying over her, she's like, well, that's easy to say. You guys don't need food, And I was like, oh, I got this. So I got in line with her, and I told her my story as we walked through. And she ended up coming back helping. She didn't think you didn't have to, just because you're in need don't mean you can't help other people. She could not believe my story of having 6 kids, and at that point we were living over across the street. In the church house, and going through it. And sometimes people have to hear your story to connect to theirs. So I just want our church to look like benevolence. I think that's just the closing part. Like I want us to love each other without the
unconditionally.
Without that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. It's been inspiring to me just to hear more about your lives. And this is what we need to do with everybody. Find out about their lives.
Yeah. That's it, because we all have a story to tell.
Yeah.
And the thing is, where's your road to Damascus? Like, what changed your life? You know, and you have to figure out what got you to Christ. But at the same time, you can't keep that to yourself. Like, you got to go out and spread the word. And it's not just the book. It's about what led you to Christ. Like, with me, I love to write a book. I always tell people it's called Triple B. It's Black, Blind, and Broke. My road to Damascus.
Okay.
So it is like, you know, because every part of that, being black, being blind, and being broke, all of that struggle is what, you know, Christ is what kept me in those three situations. Christ is the glue to that. And I just hope that we can get back to loving each other for who we are, and that's people, no matter your color, you know.
Thank you so
I hope
much.
Maybe
we'll see that book someday.
That's right.
Okay, thank you guys for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you.